The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Hello everyone, welcome back. It is July 4th, supposedly Independence Day in my country, and to celebrate, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of freedom. In my first episode of Spleensplaining, I talked a lot about tribal circuitry and human design and how essentially the fundamental bargains of civilization are breaking down. The basic bargain with our government is that in exchange for guarantees of protection and coordination of activities on a collective level, individuals will sacrifice their resources and agree to comply to the rules. Now, in the United States, we have this idea, and it's actually kind of a mythos, that citizenship grants us certain freedoms and certain rights. It's actually pretty backwards, though, if you look at it, because human beings are sovereign. We have inherent rights. There's nothing that we can do or be that makes us any more or any less deserving of fundamental rights and liberties than anybody else. These are inherent qualities, and citizenship is not what endows us with those qualities. Now, our government supposedly acknowledges and honors and works to guarantee all of that, but that's a pretty thin veneer, and I see more and more people waking up to this fact. Honestly, it almost looks like extortion on a certain level, because it's like, look, I know and you know that tomorrow, if I wanted to, I could come rip you from your home and strip you of all of your individual rights and liberties. But if you pay me and obey me, I'm going to protect your right for me not to come and do that. And of course, then there's this part of the bargain where collective activities are supposed to be well maintained and organized and governed by this power structure, but I mean, look around us. We have crumbling infrastructure and a bureaucracy that is so fat and inefficient and dysfunctional that it could not minister to the needs of the people that are supporting it if it even ever wanted to at this point. And when the people in charge are so addicted to their control and their status, and they're so aggressively self-serving, fulfilling these promises to the collective and to the masses that support it, it just becomes nearly impossible. You may or may not have ever heard of a man by the name of Edward Bernays. This is Sigmund Freud's nephew. He pioneered very, very powerful techniques for shaping and manipulating public opinion. He actually called it engineering consent. I think that's pretty telling. He was really influential post-World War I in influencing corporations. He is very responsible. He's like the father of public relations, he's so called, and he was instrumental in entrenching the horrific realities of marketing in our society. But he was also highly influential in American politics. Let me give you a quote from his book Propaganda that really shows his political ideology, which became, and to this day, is the ideology of those in power right now. So I quote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, and our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind." Oofed. Now, this shows us with crystal clarity what those who pull the wires, so to speak, think of and have to say about free and critical thinking, individual development and education, and basic humanity. So it shows that the reigning view of what a democracy is and should be by those in charge is one where the masses are given an illusion of freedom to think and act as they choose, but since birth, they have been highly, highly programmed, controlled, manipulated into thinking and being and acting in certain ways that uphold the programming. I think it's really important to understand how critical it is to keep the masses in not self, to bolster and strengthen the not self in every individual in order for this system to function. Our political parties, news media, the way we're educated, and even freaking entertainment in this country are all crafted and shaped to mold our very beings into these empty vessels that are just prime material to replicate and carry out this programming. It is highly not self. Highly, highly not self. And because of how deep this is, I mean, we are spoon-fed relentlessly from the moment we incarnate into this society with these thoughts and these habits and these behaviors. And because questioning all of this on this level can be really anxiety producing, it's super, super destabilizing to our identities because they're not our true self. They're this trash that has been programmed into us to replace our true selves. It's easy for us to see how, for the masses, this program, it's like a steel trap on their minds. It's just so much to have to contend with. So much of our basic reality and what we know and what we feel is controlled and manipulated, and it can be really shattering to try to come to terms with this. And so it's really hard to convince people to even begin to question some of this because they're so doggedly loyal to whatever it is, a political party, capitalist consumerism. It has replaced our true identities. It's all we've ever known. And to fish ourselves out of it or to try to help others to come to realize, it's an extremely difficult process. For me, and I know a lot of people my age who are like this, I have felt pretty immune to this for a while. I don't know if it has to do with my individual body graph, my individual circuitry, right? But for a long time, I have simply been unable to take part in this nonsense. And I'm not advocating for anything illegal. Play safe, keep yourself on the straight and narrow, play by the rules. But within the boundaries of your own sovereign being, you do not have to be a part of this conditioning. You do not have to host these programs. Somewhere deep down, all of us know that this is not freedom. This is not real security. Find out your strategy and your authority and start to follow your own life in this world. It's hard. You're going against the masses. You're swimming upstream. So have you ever heard of Maslow and his hierarchy of needs? Well, the need for safety comes second only to basic physiological needs like food, shelter, and water. Humans need a sense of stability. They crave structure and order in order to function well in this life. But that being said, security is temporary at best and ultimately is an illusion. There are no guarantees in this life, and it's not to say that we should be reckless, but we, in reality, have very little control over a lot that happens to us. We really do. And it's the desire for such control that leaves us so open to the conditioning, so open to be manipulated and controlled in this way. Because what corporations or these overlording structures, which essentially are the same thing in our culture right now, but what they're selling us is basically the safety of being inside a cage. And it's not a physical trap, but it's a trap for your mind. It's the offer of enslaving your minds, and then that's going to dictate your options, your behaviors. So, what do we do about this basic fundamental need for a sense of security about the ground underneath our feet? Paradoxically, the way to the truest sense of security that we have is to fully experience how deeply, deeply insecure we actually are. This thin crust and a narrow strip of atmosphere is all that holds life together in this plane. Our proximity to the sun, there is such a delicate balance. We are living in collective denial about the fragility of human life, especially now. It's getting ever and ever and ever more tenuous. We are hurtling towards the brink of disaster in a lot of ways. Not denying that reality is a first step. The deconditioning process of human design helps us come out of virtual reality and have our feet on the ground and just embrace life for what it is, with all of its highs and lows, fears, anxieties, and all of that. Deconditioning means we're constantly letting go of old forms, be it behaviors, thought patterns, relationships, jobs, where we live, personas, all so that our true self can emerge. But this process carries with it fear, resistance, pain, loss of control, all of that. And it's highly unpleasant. It just is. It's the concept of becoming comfortable in the uncomfortable, but it is so unbelievably uncomfortable to embrace uncertainty. It is so much easier to retreat into the conditioning, into those comforts, and just avoid painful or frightful experience. So much of what we're doing in the not self is anything we possibly can to avoid anything that in the tiniest way threatens the not self, or we think threatens the not self. And a lot of this, guys, is not actually going to kill us. A lot of the threats that we perceive are just to our not self, to our ego. They are nothing that's going to take us down. But we avoid it like the plague, right? So often, so many of us, we just pull that veil back on over our eyes and we project our shadow onto somebody else because of how unbelievably excruciating it is to apply that sword of truth to ourselves and to our lives in an uncompromising way, to just deal with what it is, with what we are. But feelings don't just go away. You can repress them for a time, but they stay with us. And in fact, they really muck us up. They stick around in our energy bodies, actually very much strengthened by the obscurity of residing in our subconscious, in our unconscious. And they program us further and further and further away from our true selves, from the background of our psyche. They also densify and congeal in our physical bodies, creating limits to our posture, to our breathing, to our range of motion. It creates inflammation, blockages, disease, just to name a few consequences of stuck energy that gets into our physical body and really wreaks havoc. So I want to share that last year I had my foundation brutally shaken. And there were days where I legitimately did not know how I was going to move forward or even survive what I was experiencing, truly. A year later, though, I view the whole ordeal as the best thing that could possibly ever happen to me. All of my false senses of security were stripped away from me in an instant. I was left with me, myself, and I had to learn to put my trust and anchor myself in something outside of the Maya, outside of the generated world of appearances. So I am a 6-2 profile in human design, and if you know anything about the 6-line life path, it is incredibly difficult. Until post Saturn return, you cannot build a foundation for yourself. It is like trying to live on top of quicksand, where the landscape just rapidly changes and you do not feel like you can get a foothold in this life until much later on, until you're approaching middle age and your Chiron return. Ra has said about 6 lines that we just got to make it to post-Saturn return. We just got to make it to our Chiron return. But unfortunately for so many of us, in order to survive the kinds of compromises that we've had to make against ourselves, we are so not self by the time we get there, if we even survive, that it is virtually impossible to recover our true self. Unfortunately, that does fit right in line with what I've experienced in my life, but I do feel really grateful to be a 6 line because of how it has shaped me and what I have learned through all of those really difficult experiences. And I also feel very grateful that I have not lost my sense of self in an irrecoverable, irredeemable way. I'm very, very lucky. So now, all of that being said, none of that compares to the absolute gauntlet that was last year. I'm telling you, it was exquisite. I can't even describe how shattering that experience was for me. My Chiron return isn't for another 4 years, so I don't know if my timeline was accelerated for some reason. I can't know, but what I can say is the universe absolutely forced me, gave me no other choice but to surrender. You know, in some ways, having your reality shattered like that is almost the easier path, because I can tell you, willingly giving up your delusions when you are so locked into a very, very deep, not self state of denial, it can be virtually impossible. Trying to fish yourself out of all of that, it is so, 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 so hard. It goes against all of your conditioning since birth. I mean, most of us don't want to get out of samsara. We don't want out of suffering. We just want samsara to be a little better. We just wish we had a more comfortable, nicer, prettier cage that had more of the things we like in it. We don't actually want to get free from the cage. We just wish it could be a little bit better. It's part of why, even though the Maya truly, truly sucks right now, I'm kind of excited, because it's only this level of uncomfortability and this level of feeling like we're on the brink of catastrophe that is going to finally shake up and wake up people. I have the 2551 channel activated in my human design body graph, and gate 25 is initiation through shock. What happened to me in 2021 last year, it shook me to my core. It made it impossible for me to slip back into being asleep around the idea that I have control over my life and that I get to dictate how things go. And really, that's what false senses of security boil down to. This idea that I have control over what I experience, and then when I get things dialed in the way that I like, then it shouldn't change and it shouldn't go away. That's what we're sort of seeking when we're seeking false security. It is an illusion, though. It is not real. Life doesn't work that way. And in fact, it is stagnant, and we would never grow if life worked that way. And if I could have been completely honest with myself prior to this shock of initiation that I experienced, I was stagnant and I was kind of miserable. I just didn't see it, because the comfort of the known is like, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And that's where I was. And the universe needed to kick my butt. I tend to believe what we're doing in human design is shedding as much as we possibly can of our preconceived ideas about life and about ourselves. And that definitely has to do with our ideas about what being secure truly is. Having a willingness to experience the full, exquisite pain of the human condition, I think, is a prerequisite to following the path of truth and deconditioning. Rather than that shock of initiation, deconditioning is a gentler, slower process, so we can go through layers and layers and layers of what's untrue in us so that that true self can emerge. It doesn't get rid, though, of pain, of fear, of attachment, of loss, any of these things that we deem unpleasant. Those are the risks, the cost of fully engaging in life and participating in life without those buffers of delusion and denial and distortion that sort of numb things down and make it a little bit more palatable for us in the short term. Of course, in the long term, it is much more painful, much more dangerous, and includes much more loss, because sort of what happened to me, the universe, because I was resisting, it had to rip things away from me violently. And my hope with sharing some of this is that we see to be proactive about our deconditioning and following our strategy and authority could help prevent us from having to learn the hard way about some of these things. The process of deconditioning frees up a tremendous amount of energy that has previously been stuck in trying to control how we're perceived and guard and manipulate reality and others to protect the not self from having to experience reality as it actually is. The generated world vampirizes off of our energy. All of those stuck emotions and traumas that bog down our systems, all the programs that we're running, it really depletes us, and it prevents us from having access to the vital energy and, quite frankly, the nerve to become a true individual and to walk the path of truth and do what's right, regardless of what anyone else thinks and what the generated world might throw at us for disobeying, right? For not going along with the program. I think true security is finding that place where you can be the passenger in a vehicle, life is happening through you. You're clear, you're awake to what's going on, you're not distorted, you're fully experiencing it, but you're not trying to figure it out, you're not trying to control it. It's just that whatever is required by your strategy and authority, you do. And you can trust that in the moment your authority commands something, you will have everything you need and you'll know everything you need to know in order to carry out what your authority is prompting you to do. You don't have to brace or anticipate or figure out what the future is going to hold so that you will be able to do it. You're just going to know, and you're going to have everything you need, I promise, and you can totally trust that. Just go by the inspiration of your energetic makeup. Allow yourself to feel and fully experience whatever comes through. Let it move through you. Don't attach to it. Don't amplify it. Just allow it to come. Direct the energy per your authority. Be responsible for yourself and keep out of the not-self mind. Do not be seduced by these not-self programs that sell you a solution to manufactured crises. Don't be shepherded back into a cage. Stay with life. Stay present. Witness life in all its imperfect perfection as it is unfolding before you. That, to me, is true freedom. As Ra said, no choice. It's not up to me. I'm just one little drop of consciousness in this ocean of consciousness, and I'm just here to play my individual role, to be this passenger in this vehicle, and to experience this, to stay alert and stay conscious. So if you know anything about me, watched my first episode, you know that I'm all about the body. And I wanted to mention there are so many somatic practices that will help in deconditioning. Walking, dancing, singing, chanting. These are all amazing practices to get energy moving and establish a flow and clear out the old and make room for the true self. I personally love Kundalini Yoga because it really super metabolizes current and past emotional energy. There is a YouTube channel, Kundalini Live. There are fabulous, excellent free classes there, so you can check that out. But you want to have clarity and sensitivity inside so that you can hear and have the vitality to respond to what your authority is prompting you to do. By regularly working with the body, you can free yourself and keep yourself free and clear from all of this crap, all of this not self-programming. And I really want to mention how important it is to have a support system, okay? This can be dangerous. Life is a lot, and we carry so much, not only our own traumas and what we've been through and our pain and all of that, but we have family stuff to deal with, karmic humanity stuff, what's going on in the collective that is, operating through us, and even past lives. So there is a lot, and it can be deeply unsettling. It can be a lot of things. And so I have a classic CBT therapist. It's a game changer for me. I really recommend having that in place for yourself. If that resonates with you, I really encourage you. There are professionals out there, and hopefully you do have friends and family and people that love you and care about you and support you. I really, really hope that's the case. But if it doesn't feel like you do, then find people, get that in place so that this process is going to be a lot better with loving people around you and caring professionals who have your back. Okay, so one of the last things I wanted to share is an exercise from this book. If you are not seeing my video and you're just audio only, this is The Language of Emotions by Karla McLaren. And I highly recommend it. It is just chock full of resources on understanding the full spectrum of our emotions and using that energy and being able to direct it for our own purposes, for our own deconditioning, and just establishing that flow state in life, okay? And I wanted to share a quick exercise from this book. It is really, really simple and helps us get into flow. So what you do is you breathe in deeply, deep inhale, hold at the top for 3 seconds, count to 3, and then as you exhale, you want to make little wrist circles and neck circles, and just as you're breathing out, It spirals through your wrists and your neck, and you release. Then you breathe in again. Deep breath, hold for 1, 2, 3, and spiral it out as you exhale. Do it one more time. And then once you're done with those 3 breaths, sit inside and notice how there is a new flow that has been established. This flowy energy is the energy of healthy sadness. Sadness allows us to release and let things go. And I think that is critical to deconditioning in human design, is to be able to let things go. Just deep breath and let that sucker go by, right? Just process this emotion through you. Don't let it get stuck. Don't shove it down and try to avoid it and repress it, but at the same time, don't gin it up and amplify and really get into the drama and the trauma of some of these intense emotions. Be with it, be present, ground, get into that flow, and just let it have its time. Let it visit you, welcome it, embrace it. It is part of this pain of the human condition. That is a requirement for walking the path of truth. So don't get stuck up in your energy, just let it be, right? And these are things like this and all of the somatic practices that I've said. These are tools in your toolkit to help you master that and master your energy and have vitality, have a true well of personal power that you can count on, and you can get yourself to that space where you're like, oh, nope, I'm not operating on the not self. I'm not going to believe those lies. I'm not going to go along with this freaking disgusting, toxic trash program. I am my own authority. I know what that is. I know what I believe. I know what I stand for, and I'm standing in it. And no amount of outside manipulation is going to get me to waver from my center. Okay, so as I kind of wind down and wrap up here, I wanted to share a quote from Albert Camus that I feel speaks so well to resisting the matrix and the programming and dealing with how unfree and insecure we really are. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And to that I say, yes! Heck yeah. So that's a lot. And I hope you feel inspired and invigorated in this path of deconditioning the not self. Stay out of the mental games. Just say no to the programs offering you those false senses of security and freedom. Go out there and have your own Independence Day where you celebrate the independence of your mind and yourself that wields that sword of truth unrelentingly and just embraces life on life's terms. You follow your own inner authority. Much love to all of you beautiful individuals. And until we meet again, have a blessed journey.